if certain people from our countries have that resilience, it was never by choice. Like, you can't just say like they had a choice. Like, a lot of people don't want to be like resilient also. Like, they want a life where they have access to most of the things available to them, basic stuff, basic health rights, education, and
Welcome to the
okay.
podcast.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time.
Yeah.
And we have had a lot of conversations off camera, and I'm really inspired. And I feel like your work is very inspiring and empowering, more specifically. So recently you were at Oxford.
Yeah.
Tell us briefly about that before we get into actually what it is that you do.
I went to Oxford to attend the school global forum. So they arrange it every year, and they bring the young leaders from the global south and from different countries as well. And we talk about different issues related to climate, mental health, foreign policy. And I got invited through LinkedIn, to be honest. And I just knew this person from 3 years ago. And yeah, it was nice. I had the opportunity to meet a lot of other young people who were working on different issues. And the weather was nice as well in Oxford, which was a plus and a bonus. And yeah, I had the opportunity to just listen to a lot of like leaders who are doing incredible work in their countries. So it was very like a wholesome sort of conference at the same time, like just learning about different leaders, what they've been doing, network. And I had the opportunity to share my work, what we're doing in Afghanistan, and the future projects that we're working on. So yeah, it was really nice.
Afghan Youth Ambassadors for Peace. That is your project. That is NGO,
Hmm.
non-government organization.
Yes.
So the last time we had an NGO founder on here was Taban Shorosh, and that podcast was very popular because people like you and Taban, you speak through and you work through your lived experience. That's not something that can be replicated. I can read as many books as I want about Afghanistan, and I will never feel what it is to be an Afghani citizen, to be affected by the issues there, the lack of education in some ways, which we will talk about. Same goes for you, I guess. You could read as many books as you want about Kurdistan. So lived experience is very important, and I'm happy to see a world where, on a continual basis throughout the year, people like Heela are being invited to events where they do the talking instead of, with all due respect, the people who do nothing but draw up legislation and use fancy words. These are my opinions, but I think it's important when making change in a country that on a grassroots level, as I've heard you say continuously, that the people are involved. And that's what you do. So I suppose just express to everybody how you get the help to Afghanistan in the grassroots level.
I would want to talk about like why we started this initiative first. When I started the NGO, I was only 19, so it's quite young. Obviously, in Afghanistan, where I'm from the Nangarhar province and Laghman province, which is the eastern part of Afghanistan. And when we started this organization, it was us and some other young people who said like, "Oh, why don't we start working for peace, but have like a very different approach to it?" And we were quite young at the beginning. We started with doing a lot of like talking about UN resolutions and different policies. And then when we went to the provinces, a lot of people didn't actually understand these things at all. Like I don't, first they didn't understand, second they didn't care. And then when we kind of like, okay, like we thought that all these conferences and events that are happening at the UN level, different countries are gathering, a lot of young world leaders are coming into this conference, but why we're not seeing like a lot of like changes in countries like Afghanistan? So that's when we started the Afghan Youth Ambassador for Peace, and our main approach was how do we localize it? How do we reach to the people who are actually being impacted by war and conflict and climate change? And when we started this organization, we reached to a lot of young people on the ground, and we said like, okay, you know what our role is? We're just enablers and facilitators. We're not going to represent you. We give them the tools, the money, the facilities, so they can lead in their own community. So we started doing a lot of like youth empowerment workshops, and we gathered peace building dialogues with different stakeholders, whether it was religious leaders, tribal leaders, women, men, young people. We brought everyone together and we said, like, let's talk about these issues using our own Afghan tradition in terms of like sitting together in a circle and talk about these issues. And my experience back then was obviously we kind of faced a lot of resistance because if you're a young organization, you don't know the context that well, you don't have resources, you don't have funding. And we were quite ambitious as well at that age. It's like, yes, we're going to start this work and we're going to like change our country, our provinces, which is good to have that sort of mindset at the beginning. But obviously, like I said, we were quite young, we didn't understand the context that well. And slowly, we kind of like improved the work we do on the ground. And right now, because I'm based in the UK now, and my team is all over the country and different places, the way we're reaching out to people on the ground in Afghanistan is both online and offline. We're doing a lot of humanitarian work. We're providing mental health services. We're providing art therapy workshops, somatic therapies to a lot of women in Afghanistan. We're providing books because education is banned in the country. So our priorities kind of shifted every year depending on the context of the country. So that's how we're reaching out to the people at the moment in Afghanistan at the local level.
I heard you say in an interview and briefly there as well that it was important to help with the fundamental basics and reaching out to the communities because a lot of what we might put forward as change as the Western world is alien to people outside of the West. We're in a beautiful little bubble, which is truly a privileged one. And we use fancy terms like polycrisis, whereas you said something on multiple interviews actually. Some women pulled you to the side and said, I just want to feed my child. I can't even begin to imagine how impactful those words are, but then how much it almost take a mental toll on you as well. Because it might be amazing to know you're making change, but you almost get secondhand trauma and stress from seeing the issues in your home country, something so close to your heart.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Afghanistan, so I lived most of my life in Afghanistan. So hearing these stories became like a normal for a lot of us. And like I said, when we started this organization, because there were so many other organizations and NGOs running at the same time, like Afghanistan has relied on humanitarian aid for decades. So it was not a new thing that, we're running an NGO. And most of the attitude at the beginning was kind of the same. It's like, oh, you're just another organization. What's the point of like coming here and doing all these things? You're just a project. You're gonna do a few projects and go back to Kabul in the city. And that's what kind of like hit us as well, as like if they already think that this work we're doing is not making any long-term impact, so it's very hard to change the social situation or issues that we're having at the local level. The whole thing is the mindset as well was quite negative, but also very suspicious. It's like, oh, what are you doing here? Like, have you came to just do a project? And this was a very normal thing. And later, when we started working a lot about trauma and healing, like then we kind of understood that most Afghans, especially women, are always on survival mode, and they still are. So, like whenever we did any project, they thought, oh, they're just gonna do a 3 days workshop and then just go back to whatever they were coming from. And then that was kind of a normal thing. So the more stories we were hearing, like some people didn't had access to basic healthcare, some didn't have access to food, some lost their families, like their father, their brothers in the war as well, and the only breadwinner was just their mom. Children were not allowed to go to school, girls were still not allowed to go to school. There was early forced child marriages in the country going on. So there was a lot of issues, and for us we kind of like got overwhelmed as well. As like, okay, which one should we tackle first, and what should we do? So it was a bit overwhelming at the beginning as well. Is like, are we actually making an impact or not?
Because you're just young yourself, you and your friends, you're trying to make a difference. It's not easy in the slightest, but the beauty is that you have now been around for 8 years?
6.
6 years. Now, I did some research and most NGOs don't go past 5, do they?
To some extent, it depends on the funding.
But the key is, how does somebody maintain that?
I think for our organization, because most of us are just doing volunteer work and we don't get a lot of funding to begin with. When we started AYAPO, obviously at the beginning there were funds, but now because of the new development aid cut everywhere, USAID cut their aid as well, a lot of NGOs are struggling to get any funding. And for us, we're mostly doing a lot of project ad hoc basis as well. If we get any donation, we're gonna send it back to Afghanistan. But at the same time, acknowledging that this is not sustainable as well, because we're reaching to quite only like a few people in the country, not like a lot of people at the moment. So what we're doing is like we do focus group discussion on the ground. We have volunteer members on the ground and they ask us, okay, this is a priority in this district. Let's just focus on this. This is a priority in this district. For example, some people in the community will ask us, we don't have access to clean water. Can you do a well project for us? Then we donate and fundraise for the specific project. Otherwise, say we don't have electricity in this place, and we'll do that. So we're like responding to whatever is going on in that specific provinces. And we're only working in 3 provinces because first, we don't have the funding. Second, we're not a big group and we're only doing work on volunteer basis as well. So we're quite limited for like in terms of capacity and the work we're doing. And this is not just our NGO struggles with this. A lot of youth led organizations struggle with this so much. That's why we always advocate for flexible funding to be sent out to a lot of NGOs, especially if they're a small nonprofit organization still working in countries like Afghanistan. We need other flexible ways to support these organizations because the context keeps changing in countries like Afghanistan, and sometimes we don't have the resources like big organizations have. Like, for example, in the UK, we don't have those resources, so we're just like doing whatever we can to support and provide that support to the community.
How can someone donate? If Lazo wanted to donate, how does he get the funds to you, and then how does that go back to the people that need it in Afghanistan?
Oh, we have pages, so you can go to the website and there's a donation button and then you can click on it, and then once we receive donation we will send it back to our focal point on the ground and they will do the distribution. And you can pick which cause you're supporting, whether you want to support someone's education or whether you want to support humanitarian aid packages to a family, or if you want to support a family for 3 months, 6 months, because a lot of people don't have, when I tell you like they don't have food, they actually don't have anything. And there is a humanitarian crisis going on in Afghanistan. And $50 or £50 can be like food for them for 3 months. And even like $10 or £10, £20, that could buy a lot of things for them on the ground. And when people, I think, sometimes think that we need donation, they might think of like, oh, they might need like £1,000 or like £2,000. But no, it's like even the small portion or help that you're getting on the ground is a big thing and making a lot of impact for families on the ground.
Honestly, £50 feeding somebody for 3 months is, I don't know, I think it just reminds me again how privileged my life is. I am a self-aware person. I do speak to people like Heela and try to always learn from them. But just to put it into perspective, you probably couldn't do these days in the UK shopping for 1 week for 2 people on £50. You would actually struggle. And that's not to mention if you have pets, for example.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So just on the other side of the world, due to impacts of war, £50 is 3 months of food. Wow.
Yeah, and I think I don't blame a lot of people for not knowing this. There is lack of awareness about these
Yeah.
things, and especially in the UK, if the cost of living is so high, there is inflation, and a lot of people, I think, kind of became really desensitized to a lot of content they're seeing on social media. So it's sometimes we try to be proactively reach out to people as well, like our NGO, because I know people are not gonna just come to us and like, oh, here's £50 and go feed some people on in Afghanistan. It's us as well, but also there's like a very big strong disconnect of people living in Western countries and then what's happening to countries like Afghanistan or different war zones. And the thing is, like, yes, they can give £50, but it has to be consistent at some point as well.
Yeah.
How do we make this more sustainable? Because people on the ground will build hope as well. Like, yes, there is a source of support that is coming. And sometimes one thing we struggle a lot with that, yes, we support them for 3 months and 4 months, and then you kind of like have that emotional pressure on you, like, oh, where else can I get that support for them? Because I know their situation on the ground. There's unemployment rate is so high in Afghanistan. A lot of farmers are struggling to even make a basic income. Poverty is increasing day by day. So how do we actually provide and support these families? And sometimes as Afghanistan, because it's a very close community, people are there. So if one person find out they're receiving this funding, other will like, yes, where is mine? And then it's gonna be like a big demand for like, yes, we need support as well. So sometimes there's like a lot of survival guilt as well that you feel is like, oh, how can I not support all of them? Because the stories you hear on the ground, especially from the mothers and the kids on the ground, it's kind of like very it's very sad but also disheartening that why like £50 is not that much, to be honest, like if you're feeding someone for like 3 months.
No, it's not. It's not much at all. And these days, £50 in this country does nothing. But I think for you, then, your goal is to reach the masses, to increase the quantity of people that hear your voice, and hence all your efforts going all over the world to talk about what you do and what your group does and what many other people do in Afghanistan as well. Because at the end of the day, whether your group gets the funding or somebody else is helping the same people. A question I had, just because I'm very intrigued, how could you increase employment? So in those areas and villages that you help, what would employment look like?
I mean, that's kind of like a very complicated question as well, because the reason why unemployment rate is so high, one of the reason actually why unemployment rate, we don't have a structure in the country in Afghanistan. And after the Taliban takeover, obviously women are not allowed to work. So like half of the population already lost employment. So there is very limited job opportunities and people are not getting the jobs based on merit. And there isn't like a lot of investment in Afghanistan in terms of like there are like no big factories operating in Afghanistan that will create job opportunities. Most Afghans are farmers, like 80% of them are just farmers, and they don't even have the right resources like in terms of like how to sell their crops and everything. So there's a lot of issues in terms of like why there is unemployment, also like because education is banned in Afghanistan towards women. So low literacy rate obviously gonna impact employment rate in the future as well. And we already had unemployment rate before the takeover as well. So there's a lot of issues in terms of like why unemployment rate is so high in countries like Afghanistan. There is no basic infrastructure or a system to actually like empower the young people, and most of these young people are hopeless. Some like tend to like go and take narcotics because unemployment rate is high. Some do different, some join organized crimes as well. Some just completely drop out of schools because they have to feed their family. A lot of boys are dropping out of schools right now because nobody's there to feed the family.
So then you get both groups. Well, you get most of the population deprived of education, because if you're banning girls from educating themselves, and then the men or the young boys through necessity leave education to try put some food on the table, quite literally, then you have a population that is very undereducated, not by their own faults, not like just not wanting to go. In fact, they'd probably love to go, and it might be an escape from the problems they have in an everyday level. But I was just thinking as well, and we'll come back to the education point, of course. Afghanistan is a beautifully weathered, fertile country. So if somebody was to fund a farmer, which is not cheap, I understand, but some machinery, then that one-time bulk investment could feed a village, right?
Yes, definitely. And there's a lot of organization that can do that. Like if you want to reach out to some of the organization and you're like, okay, I want to support a few farmers in this village, how can I do it? They will just give you the whole structure for like, okay, you need this money if you want to buy them like a tractor or like seeds for their land. Even education, like a lot of farmers don't actually know how to like sustain their land as well and the income they're making. So, and there's also issues of climate change in the countries. We're seeing a lot of droughts in Afghanistan that's like completely destroying the lands of many farmers. And then there is no government support, not a lot of humanitarian aid can reach out to that many people. So there are different ways you can reach and support farmers. And the whole point is to make them sustainable so they can generate the income to support them and feed themselves. This should be sustainable.
Another thing that I thought about instantly is climate change also affects farmers in the UK. So, completely different landscapes. Farmers in the UK don't struggle with their tractors as much, but that's putting it lightly. But it's the same thing here because if you have been growing a certain crop for generations in this country and now there's not enough rain, then you need to be educated enough to harvest it earlier or later. The small things that make a difference to acres worth of land. Another really sad truth that comes out through people desperately trying to help their family is they often risk their lives to cross borders. And we have a large population of Afghanistani people in this country, and the vast majority of them probably left due to necessity. They and all the other ethnic minorities in this country are an absolute credit. And that's why Manchester is as amazing as it is, right? I'm Kurdish, you're Afghan, and we're friends, and the dynamic is brilliant. So there's good and bad points to migration, immigration, or diaspora, but the necessity still remains and the risk is there. Oftentimes, when I talk to people about immigration, I'm not against it. I just feel like it should be more choice rather than I risk my lives. Smugglers did this to me on my way here. I crossed on a small boat. That's the part that my heart goes out to so much because men much younger than me feel like their only hope is to travel a number of days, lands they've never seen, put their trust in people they don't know, sometimes put their life savings in the hands of people they don't know, somehow try to get to this country.
See, if you're on survival mode and you're desperate and you don't have any other choice, you do need to take whatever option is available. I'm not pro like coming here illegal ways because there's a lot of risk to it. A lot of people die during this journey. But the whole point is to understand why they're leaving. That's the whole point. We need awareness more, like what are the reason people are leaving their country. Example, if there is education is banned, yeah, there is a high unemployment, poverty is there is no humanitarian aid available to you. What else do you have? Like, what's the other choices? And sometimes I think for us, it's quite also might be harder to put our feet in their shoes because obviously we might be to a certain level very privileged to be here. Even if you're Kurdish, I'm Afghan. I also came to the UK like 3 years ago. So, like I said, I grew up in Afghanistan. I did all my education there. So kind of like I understand like why they're feeling why there is a need to leave the country. And the whole, if the country was providing all the support and the education was available, I don't think anyone would actually want to leave their homeland.
Yeah, that's one of the most common things I always hear. And I'm sure there would still be migration. It would just be on a different basis. Necessity breeds desperation, which oftentimes breeds amazing success stories. And coming from a first generation immigrant background, I know certain stories just by regular everyday people who might be a shopkeeper right now or a mechanic.
What, the Kurdish?
Kurdish or any ethnic. Honestly, some of the stories you hear from first generation immigrants make some of your favorite celebrities look like they're nothing. Because with all due respect, when your favorite celebrity complains about certain things and privileges they didn't have 10, 15 years ago before they became a millionaire,
Yeah.
you're like, well, this guy 10, 15 years ago ran away from war. Everyone has their own struggle, and it's not to undermine anyone. Of course, generations on, the Afghan kids here don't have the same struggles as their parents. I'm not saying that, but I suppose I'm always trying to pop that bubble we're in sometimes because we complain about a lot of things that to us are very standard.
Yeah.
But they should be at the same time. Education should never be a right that someone has to fight for. And unfortunately,
It is.
girls are trying. But you know more about that than I
It
do.
is surprising, like this century that we're living in with the tech and AI and how easily to get information and access to education, while on the other hand, you see millions and millions of girls completely deprived of education in Afghanistan. It should, I don't know, like people shouldn't normalize this at all. Like whenever, like it's been like more than 3 years this is happening in our country, and we did so much advocacy internationally, regionally, and locally. But to some extent, countries, especially developed countries or countries who does have the power to actually make a difference in Afghanistan, they're not doing enough. Priorities are shifting in different countries, and people don't understand that what's happening in Afghanistan can have a ripple effect in other countries as well, in regional countries as well. This is, I think, it still like shocks me now. Is like how can we like still normalize this, where like education is like, you're right, you should have access to education, but now the more I see it becoming a privilege now. Like yes, access to education is becoming a privilege now. And sometimes, because when I did my school in Afghanistan, I remember I was in a government school. We had no resources. We didn't had any labs. Most of the things were just theory. Like we were doing chemistry in our head, biology in our head. Is like yes, because we didn't had that basic resources. And when I started working in one of the universities here, I could see like how much resources are available to students here if they can use it. So there was always like this disconnect that I could feel like, oh, imagine like if we had all these resources back in Afghanistan, people and especially girls could have like made so much of their future and even their career or their education, their lives. So I always like feel that disconnect, like looking and growing up here and then seeing things here is like, uh, yeah. So there is like that survival guilt is always there, but like seeing the reality too close, sometimes like completely makes you hopeless as well. So like I have to like, oh no, like you know what, you made it through here, so let's use whatever opportunities is available to help my cousins or like my friends back in Afghanistan and the Afghan girls.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that to you. The fact of the matter is, someone like you took their resources and their efforts and put it into helping somebody. And you could have survivor's guilt as much as you want, but this is the absolute most you could probably do to give back. And you're doing it. So I think that's commendable. You and many, many other people all over the world in countries like Afghanistan. There's always someone to help, even here. If you're just looking to search for a charity, you'll find one very quickly. Sometimes just donation boxes at your local shops, at your local place of worship. And there's always somebody in need. And it's not a contest about who should get more help or whether one country has better political ties and that makes them entitled to more funding. Cough, cough, not going to mention a country. But respectfully, this is also not that country's fault. It's the political, geopolitical landscape that will isolate one country, perhaps Afghanistan in this case, and favor another, really looking past humanitarian need. I think there must be times in which those that are responsible, like the leadership and the politicians, look past whatever issues they might have together when they gather in their fancy conferences and just say, right now, we need to put a pause on that and we can fix our trade wars later. Perhaps we should help those that are in need or help those young people that are the future. And women, especially, they're sometimes often overlooked because women, especially in countries like ours, they not only need to be educated, but their education educates the next generation.
Yeah.
In countries like ours, where men are primarily the breadwinners, it's double essential for women to be educated because they are the ones spending most times with the children on an everyday basis.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just echoing what you said. Is that, like, to be honest, I know this because like when I attend the conferences, you can see there's like selective approach to different countries and whatnot. And then the thing is, like, as I worked in the system as well, sometimes like I question a lot of like our work, like, oh, should I work with this organization if they have a selective activism or approach to certain countries? To be honest, like you just learned, there's these big systems. This is not something that I can tackle alone. Like I'm just one person. So I'm trying to find as many as opportunities as I can to make sure the issue of Afghanistan is at these international platform and we're not like completely sidelined and normalized. And that's what I'm trying to focus as much as I can, because sometimes when I think about these too many problems, it's like, oh, this country is also suffering, this country is also suffering. Like, how do you pick and choose? Because obviously it's like, as a human, you also have like a certain limited capacities, like in terms of like where your energy is going as well and where your work is going. So for me, like my approach is to, as an Afghan, is to make sure the voices of Afghan women and what's going on in my country is heard at the international platform as much as I can. But that does not mean that I'm dismissing the struggles of other countries or what they have been through, because war is something that is gonna damage a lot of people, whether it's in Afghanistan or in Palestine or Ukraine. But the point is, like, how do we not make this like a competition of grief? Like, I've suffered more than you. Like, okay, what now? And I think for me as an Afghan, my mission is quite clear. Like, I know where I stand, what I represent. But at the same time, showing the solidarity to other countries is necessary. But unfortunately, sometimes it's not reciprocated, which is quite unfortunate as well.
The fact of the matter is, so we are, I guess, holding accountable the leadership by saying this. But the truth is, even if you go on social media,
Yeah.
everyday regular people do this. They make it a contest when you put a picture up of one country over the other. I don't know where this stems from. I really don't. And is it a somewhat replication of the political landscape, or are people sometimes just tribalistic? Do they prefer to help people that look like them rather than people that seem foreign to them? But I think in countries like the UK, that should be limited. We live in very multicultural areas. You've been in England for 3 years, correct?
Hmm.
I mean, you've probably lost count of the amount of different people you've met.
Yeah.
You've probably heard of languages that you hadn't heard about before, or saw religions and practices you hadn't seen before. So I think somewhat on a regular human level, I can understand in certain places if people were tribalistically helping one group over the other. But I think in the UK, we no longer have that excuse. This is very multicultural, and we experience life amongst one another. I mean, without going into, I was going
I
to
think
say,
in reality, it's quite hard, to be honest. Like, it's good that, yeah, it's UK. We have a lot of educated population, and we shouldn't do this. But unfortunately, it is going on.
but it's not just education, Heela. It's the fact that people here constantly live amongst people from all over the world. I think that's the difference, where I meet Afghanis, Pakistanis, Indians, Kurds, Iraqis, Yemenis, Emiratis. Like you'll meet everybody here. I think that type of limited thinking can often be excused in a place where someone has been surrounded by one or two groups their whole life.
Mm.
I can empathize with that. But once you grow up and you keep making friends and work colleagues from other cultures, how do you look past their issues?
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I had friends in my circle as well who were like completely like dismissed what's happening in certain countries. I think it just comes from like subconscious biases as well that we have as humans, that yes, if certain groups look like us, or like if that safety net is there, I will support the specific cause. Obviously it means like your moral compass is not right. Something is wrong with your moral compass, like you need to like check it out. um like, to be honest, I'm also finding an answer for this. Like, some people would surprise you, like especially people will go to a lot of different platforms and then completely dismiss what's going on, and then you're like, oh, I actually didn't expect this. And I still, yeah, I get your point. It was like, if country in the UK is like a lot of people you see from different countries, nationalities, why do we still like have these biases? And to be honest, I also don't know the answer. Is like, where is it coming from? But I think social media is like fueling it more, because the way algorithm is and how people are conceiving certain content online, we shouldn't like downplay that area as well, is because most of us are on our social media and like on phone all the time. So sometimes the way we're consuming the social media and the content subconsciously is like building that biases as well, because now with AI and deepfake you can create a lot of things, especially we knew like when the war and Gaza started. So like we saw what's going on, especially like you getting shadow banned for like speaking the truth. A lot of these big corporation and social media platforms are all, they have their own biases as well, and young people are looking at these things and they're building that. When sometime when we used to like make fun of our parents, is like when they see everything on Facebook they believe it, and now we're kind of like the same. We see something on TikTok and Instagram, it's like, oh, that must be true. But I think individually it's up to us as well. It's like to learn more about digital literacy and differentiate what's fake news and what's not. And think we need more investment in this in the school system as well, to like educate young people what you're consuming on social media is fake and it's like breeding more hatred towards certain groups.
Yeah, hatred somewhat is the key for social media because, well, what social media platformers want more than anything isn't actually to trigger you, it's to keep you on their platform. So if triggering you indirectly does that and you're going to share it, that's what they do. Because at the end of the day, I think for big billion-dollar corporations, the attention they garner from you is more important. I don't know if you noticed as well the change in TikTok. TikTok used to be very quick 60-second reels, and then they became 3 minutes and 15 minutes. Because again, they were like, oh, something's changed and we now need your attention again. So we'll give you longer form content if that helps.
Yeah.
I would say, from an emotional perspective, I expect people to have biases.
Mm-hmm.
Biases towards your own people, biases towards your religion, biases towards your favorite football club, like, or whatever it might be. But at some point, as you said, the bias can't make you look past somebody else. Because if someone, I don't know, indulge with me, if you're walking down the road and someone fell, I'd like to think you'd try and pick them up regardless of what they look like.
Yeah.
So sometimes trying to raise awareness regardless of what the struggle is, presuming it's not fake news, is should just be the way forward. It doesn't take much to repost something. It doesn't take much
exactly. I just want to like tap on that, because sometimes I have like, there is like certain
Do
biases.
people not pick you up on the street when you fall?
There are certain biases we have, but then what surprises me, like when there's like something that is legit wrong and you're still finding the blur lines, the gray areas. You can't find the gray areas when a genocide is happening. You can't find the gray areas when education is banned in a country towards women. So there are certain biases where it's like, oh, my football team is better than yours, or like, or like certain teams. Yeah, there is certain biases in terms of like, but then when it's like something is completely going wrong against like human nature, like it's against humanity, and then you're still like waiting for gray areas, that's what's like sometimes pisses you off so much. It's like something is and you can't repost, and you're like, oh, you know what, let me look at the other side as well. And I'm like, okay, that's where your moral campus is, like you need to like recheck it. Yeah, I think so. Well, like me and you might have biases as well, like we're still humans. But it's like when something is really wrong and there is no like gray area, there's no blur lines here, like you have to take a stand in that. That's what like surprises me most about even educated people that are in our circle as well, and like we see. And to be honest, like having a degree from a very high prestigious university or school doesn't make you like a proper leader, or like someone who can differentiate between wrong and right, because the examples are our global leaders at the moment.
I mean, not to delve too much into that realm, but people have so much mistrust when it comes to their political leadership that in a very big country, wait, I'm trying to pick my words because I'm trying not to get banned. But for example,
just say a random country.
Okay, Zelensky is the leader of Ukraine and he was once a comedian. And there's another country where a huge celebrity TV guy, a billionaire, got elected in. Sorry, guys, I'm just watching out for the algorithm. You have no idea the biases that some of these platforms have. There's just certain things I have to try and not say because the amazing stuff we're here to talk about should not be limited because then the AI on a certain platform picked my voice up. So I'm gonna go past that example real quickly, but what I'm saying is that people don't really trust their politicians because they're more than happy to elect people in who've only got their feet partially wet in this. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so
Yeah.
much mistrust that I feel like in the UK, if a big, really popular person came up to try and get voted in, they'd get voted in because we don't, for whatever reason, our politicians are not getting the job done. And it would be harsh to just say that they're not doing their jobs, but I don't know what else to say.
I think we should take some responsibility as a citizen as well. We're also the one who's electing them. I think it's every stakeholders as well. Like sometimes as politician needs to have more accountability, especially less this distrust is there. But I think the approach would be to um, educate the citizens as well about what's wrong, what's right about their election vote, and like how much it's gonna make an impact. But also different stakeholders as well, like the private companies play a big role sponsoring these politicians to get to these big seats. And the system, the way it's built, like we wouldn't allow a lot of people to enter unless you have a lot of money and network. So the system that is built is also not really like empty of corruption. There is like a lot of corruption in a lot of these systems, especially in developing countries and in developed countries. And you like constantly see politicians being failed and they don't give you what they've promised. So obviously that mistrust is always going to naturally breed. And I'm talking about my country specifically, like the trust was never there even like before the takeover, because when people are in survival mode, it's very hard to trust anyone, especially the politicians who are there to like build that system for them, especially leaders who fail to like provide that necessary support for young generation in Afghanistan. So Afghans by natural became very suspicious of a lot of stuff and superstitious as well. And it's natural, like the more you like study Afghanistan, you've been in war for almost like more than 4 decades now. 4 decades of war will do a lot to your mental health. And there's a lot of generational trauma that people are carrying. So even you ask an average Afghan, even hear what they think about UK politicians, they will have like, probably they're not like giving back to its citizens, and which I like, agree to it as well.
That's a very nice, timid response. Actually, I think they'd say a lot worse. And everybody's truth is their truth.
Yeah.
It's not to be scoffed at. But so we discussed how you make help and how you try to deliver help. How, on a more specific level, do all of these events help you in Afghanistan, or could they do more respectfully?
The conferences, you mean?
Yes.
It depends on the conference, to be honest. Like some conferences are just for a show. It's like, yes, they bring a lot of these young people and you just rush from one panel to another panel and there is no outcome. And then they will like draft a summary report that we had like 5,000 people attended this conference and that's it. Unfortunately, majority of them are like that. And then what I've experienced as well is like so far attending, at the beginning I was quite optimistic about it, like, oh yes, we will talk about the issues of Afghanistan and then maybe there's a practical solution or an impact after this event. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, and the more I grew up, the more I kind of like started learning how to navigate and find opportunities within these conferences. I think one benefit of like attending these events is meeting other young leaders from different countries and the collaboration and partnership you build with them. Because I could meet someone from Pakistan or like different countries as well who are like our neighbors, and we're like, oh, why don't we do something together because we're neighbors, we're so close by. And the other thing is still using that platform to raise awareness about it. Some people might still not know what's going on in Afghanistan. So even if I'm reaching out to certain people, that's still like a plus that they're just learning about what's going on in the country. And I think the third thing would be is just network as much as you can in these conferences and see where a potential partner or a donor that you can find in order to invest in your project, which is like a key thing as well.
Those have a habit of opening up just randomly, sometimes through a few conversations. I feel like you could achieve a lot more by having 5 conversations than you could applying for 50 different places, you know? I think when we first met and the long form discussion we first had, it felt very easy and relatable because I think we come from 2 places with very similar struggles. And as I've said before, probably even on this podcast today, it's really important with people that have lived experience to come and tell us the right ways to help these people, because going there on a little trip or on a humanitarian project, which are both amazing, by the way. I know there's a lot of volunteers all over the world, and seeing information or reading it even in a report or in a book is not the same as people telling you how to fix the issue, because Heela has a certain experience of Afghanistan that would navigate the help properly as well, because in countries like Afghanistan, if the help is not offered if the help is seen as undermining, ignoring, or polarizing within the community, you could very quickly alienate certain groups, and that might not allow you then to go and do your work in a certain part of the village or a certain part of the country, because you have political leaders, religious leaders, and maybe even groups of people that are a bit more modern in a sense, and they all are like subgroups, which bring it their own challenges, of course.
I think most of conferences, they're also built on colonial mindset. Especially if you go to these conferences, first they're like either based in a European country or like in the States or in a country where getting visa is such a big barrier. And sometimes when these conferences are happening, obviously you need someone who have lived experiences of conflict and war, so you want to hear their stories. But then how do they get visa? They can't get the visa. So even the system of how these organizations are structured or these conferences are structured, there's a lot of issues to it. Like especially when my experience, like I have visa struggles as well. Sometimes I can't attend certain conferences because I can't get the visa. And I've raised these issues as in many platforms as well. It's like, yes, one is like hearing someone through a video call. It doesn't have that much impact unless you see them in person and hear their stories. And you will see a lot of in these conferences the same repetitive faces all over. Like probably they've attended like 100 conferences at this point. And when you ask them like, oh, what was the impact of last year conferences like? And they'll be like, oh, we brought up like 10,000 people from different countries. And I'm like, but what about the victims who are actually like facing the war or persecution? And then they'll be like, oh, there's security risk, there's a visa, there's no money to bring them. And I'm like, but you can spend that much money in 10,000 applicants that you're inviting, but not just to bring them.
And the people, like you said to me earlier, they pay to be there. People pay to be at these conferences.
Yeah. Certain people pay for it as well. Like certain conferences are by invite only. Some are open to public for free, but for certain conferences, you do have to pay. Sometimes it's like 500 euro, 200 euro. So a lot of people can't afford that. And especially people's voices from the global south is very hard for them to get into these spaces. And it still is for very few privilege, because if you can speak English, it's easy to network and communicate. But then if you can't speak English and then you're struggling there at the same time, it's some of the barriers that we need to like consider and acknowledge, because if you want to make a conference, the whole point is like to bring people and talk about a solution and then implement that solution. I think we're just doing talking most of the time and not actually going to the implementation phase, because brainstorming about ideas is fun. You get that motivation, that buzz is still there. It's like, yes, I found a solution. Like, you know what? And then 1 week passed, 2 weeks passed, 3, 1, like it's in a year. And it's like, oh, what happened? Have we implemented that? They're like, oh, you're not a priority anymore.
I said this to you on our first conversation. I said, these events should not cost as much as they do. So I understand you might need a very big place to accommodate thousands of people. And it's a beautiful thing to know that thousands of people are turning up for such an important event where so many different issues are discussed. So many important people are there, whether by status or actually just the roles that they do. So Heela might not be famous, but it's probably not, my opinion, as important, if not more important, than some of the so-called suits in the building. I don't think I'm ever going to get invited to one of these conferences. But respectfully, my concern was, and I get the attention thing. You want to draw attention to these conferences, but if I have to invite celebrities there,
Mhm.
am I not? Am I not? Are we not missing the point? Aren't there enough good-willed celebrities out there to begin with who want to help? Didn't someone like, for example, like an Angelina Jolie adopt so many children that, would have had completely different lives without her intervention? Aren't there enough amazing people out there who are rich and famous who'd come to these conferences for free and take time out of their busy schedule? Why do we pander to certain names that might be going viral to bring them in? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Am I making sense here?
Yeah, I get it. I think one is like looking it from our perspective. Like from our perspective, it should be like, yes, why we're inviting these big celebrities. We can use the same money to actually do some good work on the ground in a country. And there is this perspective of the organizers as well, that because these celebrities have a very big audience, so anything they say, they might reach to those audiences through the conferences, or just like raise awareness about what's happening. I think I think it's very context specific as well. In certain conferences, we do need big voices so they can raise issues about certain issues, because to be honest, they have the cloud, they have the platform, they have the audience that they need. Some have like millions and millions of followers, and if they say something about specific cause, that might like raise more awareness. But at the same time, it's like it's very hard to differentiate whether it's just a performative act or they're actually doing something that they care about, or like as a goodwill ambassador. But my personal opinion would be is like to have a balance between them.
I suppose what I was trying to say earlier was that as much as it is amazing for famous people to use their platform, we don't just have to pander to those that are viral at that point and say, "Oh, come along to this event." I think there are many really famous people out there who have it within their hearts. If you just tell them early enough, they'll come to your events, they'll ask you for nothing, they realize their privileges, and they will advocate for you. And maybe that is the case, maybe it isn't. But what I'm saying is that this is not a concert. We don't need headliners. Do you know what I mean? This is a place for making a difference. And the people that want to be there should be there. And I think all over the world, there are plenty of famous people out there who would want to put their name to a cause without even having to get paid for it. They might just say, you know what, accommodate me those few days. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be like the ideal scenario, right?
No, but come on, Heela. There must be a lot of famous people out there who would happily go to a UN event or would happily go to One Young World. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and there are, I think, it depends, like, because I don't know how these conferences usually get organized. Like, I don't have no idea. Like, how do they structure in terms of like who to get invited, like how, and even how they're actually picking up the celebrities. I think one is like, yeah, they like whoever has like the most clout, they should like invite them. But I think is, yeah, they have to make like a bit of conscious effort in terms of like, if you're inviting this person, is that person actually like here for make an impact, like from the bottom of their heart, or is just like, yes, for them to just get more clout, that yes, they're like a goodwill ambassadors and they're doing some charity work. Because most celebrities will just do a performative videos of like solidarity videos, like support this and cause, and then after a few months they will delete that as well. So um it is, I think, ideal would be, yes, that if they're coming, they should make sure that the people who are coming are not just people who are like have a bad reputation, or just like they're doing crazy stuff on social media and then they're attending these conferences to get more clout, but people who are actually making an impact. Because there are some really good celebrities as well who are donating millions of pounds to a lot of good work on the ground, and the donation that they're receiving for a lot of charities. So yeah, just we have to be quite selective and like conscious in our choices as well.
No, definitely. And that's exactly what I'm saying. A lot of famous people are, they were once regular people, and not everyone forgets that. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Not everybody forgets that. So That's all I'm saying. Like you, I don't know who puts these events together, but wanting to be there is people act differently when they want to be there. People try harder when they want to be there.
There's a lot of like jargons there, like fluffy words. I think most of these speeches are also written by ChatGPT now, so you can even tell if they're like saying certain speeches and the keywords they're picking up. I mean, obviously, if you live like in that type of luxury and bubble, and you all of your needs and necessities are met in very quickly, so like you have like a lot of money, you're not on survival mode. So for them, even coming to these conferences, they might think, I'm just assuming here, is that yes, we're actually like doing a lot of work to actually come to this conference and give a speech, and take a few pictures. But I'm still finding answer as well. Maybe we should invite someone who actually build these conferences structures. Like, oh, how do you actually like? What is the process? Like, I don't get it. Explain to us.
So that's a good question then. So have you connected with anyone on LinkedIn that you can refer to me that might be based in the UK that I can talk to?
Yeah, most of mine is like mostly my own focal point, like because every conference have different team members and then they allocate different focal points to certain speakers. But then the team is larger than the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest influence is like the leadership team that has, because they're the one who needs to approve the speaker, who needs to come to this conference, who needs to speak well. I think they're the key members that people should be talking to, but also they're very hard to reach as well at the same time. So
yeah, they're busy. It's an important job, and every job can be done better. I certainly would never want to undermine something that's coming from a good place.
yeah, I think that's why like usually they have like feedback surveys and like they ask you like what do we need to improve, and a lot of time I do give them like, okay, this is certain things we need to improve, and for me, like I need more space to talk to the policymakers or like the leaders directly. Like just don't put me aside that young person should only speak to a young person. That's a very tokenistic approach to giving you this platform. And then I think one thing I've also noticed as well is the way like they put different speakers on one panel, and then they're like, oh, because you come from Afghanistan, so you need to like talk about only sad stories and stories of resilience. So you know that identity box, like they've put you there, is like this is one conference that happened and it's like still like in my head. I went to one of the countries, very wealthy country, I will not name it, and then I did my speech, and then after that some of the organizers came to me and they're like, can you repeat what you said in the panel? And I'm like, yeah, which part? Oh, the part about the struggles and your resilience, because people here are so privileged that they need to hear your story in order to get motivated. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, that's comes from, I don't know how dull the whole conversation was, but like the audacity is also that they kind of like, and the second follow up question was even more mind blowing, is that they said that, oh, because when people are so depressed because of the privileges and the easy life that they have here, that they need to hear the struggle of people coming from conflict zone. And this is not a joke. These are like organizers from this conference. And I'm like, they kind of like romanticize the struggles, like us as our struggles or resilience. And I always tell them like, if certain people from our countries have that resilience, it was never by choice. Like you can't just say like, yeah, they had a choice. Like a lot of people don't want to be like resilient also. Like they want a life where they have access to most of the things available to them, basic stuff, basic health rights, education. And I'm just saying, because these type of reaction, when you think of it like, oh, I'm in a conference, everyone's super educated, like people are understanding, and then you have this type of reaction. It's like, oh, tell me about the most traumatizing thing that happened to you right now so people can get motivated.
Okay, I'm going to go on a bit of a monologue / rant. Heela, have your pineapples and listen. I'll put it this way for you, right? We generally, through media or through things like, let's say, concepts like the American dream, we romanticize this idea of struggle always leading to victory. But the fact of the matter is, and people who are in these environments can tell you, and the stats can also tell you, the more deprived you are, the truth is the more likely you are to actually be unsuccessful in things that you go for, or be traumatized in a way where you almost ruin that for yourself. Your brain, it doesn't know how to enjoy the happiness because it has spent so much time on surviving that it doesn't realize it's wounded. You know, you often see this with pictures of animals that might survive a predatory attack, and they've got this massive gushing wound, and oh my god, this is such a viral video, let's put it online, this is nature, it's resilient. Yeah, but if that's not somehow treated, or if miraculously this animal doesn't somehow get cured, that infection kills the animal as much as the attack does. So this idea of you have a sad story and you made it out, for every one person that did, there's way more that never did. We need to stop doing this. I have something that a lot of people say that I keep saying as well. Success breeds success.
Mhm.
You know, if someone says, how do I become successful? For example, try to educate yourself, try to put yourself around other successful people. If you put a whole nation directly or indirectly into war, of course it's not going to progress.
Yeah.
And it might have the same problems that it does today in 5 years. And of course it's harder to help them. Of course they're going to be suspicious and not trust people and have a completely different outlook on life.
Exactly.
You know, so the people who had the audacity to say that to you really need to look at themselves in the mirror. And the people in the audience who have the audacity to be on their phone when someone is talking, because apparently they wanted to come to this big event and listen to change makers, and then they were like, oh, well, let me scroll through Instagram, right?
Yeah, they're gonna be on their phone. Majority of the time, people who attend these conferences, they're not listening actually, unless you call on them. It's like, I'm speaking and you're on the phone.
You actually did that at one
Yeah,
event.
I know.
You don't have to name which one it was.
I want to like follow up on what you said, because my personal experience when I was in the state and then I came to the UK. Obviously, majority of my friends were people who grew up in like not in a war zone. So sometimes when I talk about certain stories, so they're like completely blank. And some of them would be like, oh wow, this happened. It's like in the movies. And then I would be like, okay, but I might be just like one rare example that I made it here. Like I also had the privilege to take therapy. Like therapy does give you a lot of support and healing. Like I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, and like I still have a lot of things that like when I sit and then like triggers me when I talk about it. And I was telling one story to some of my friends in the UK. I was like, when we were in school in Afghanistan, we had a terrorist attack. And for example, this was our schools. We had snipers from both buildings shooting, and we were like studying because we didn't get the alert that they're like attacking us. And this was like ongoing shooting, and we then got evacuated. And this was when I was like in 9th grade, 10th grade. So like I was quite young. And when I tell these stories, they're like, this is how we studied our education. Like a lot of these things were not normal. And when we got back home, I remember my parents like, everyone needs to like be in the lobby because you can't go near this windows because they will. And because our house was literally on that, next to that building as well. And even when my siblings, when they were in school, there was a lot of attack. One time they even like went inside the school because the school was next to a prison. And at that young age, they were about like 10, 11 years old experiencing this thing. And sometimes like when I first took therapy and talked about these issues to my therapist, she was like, okay, this is like not normal for a lot of people. And some people don't make it out of like experiencing these things. So I work with a lot of refugees in here in the UK. And when I hear their stories, they're still in survival mode, and it will take ages for them to come out of that zone or like that state and actually enjoy life. So that's why like I think sometimes it does triggers me, because when we go to these conferences and people hear your stories and they're like, oh my god, yeah, you made it, and it's very inspiring. And some people have good intention, to be honest. Like when they hear it, they kind of like sympathize with you. It's like, yeah, how can we help? But other people, they imagine it because, and then they like acknowledge their own privilege, but at the same time they're so like,
You're a cool story for them.
yeah. And I remember this thing called survivalship biases. It's a term. where people only look at few successful people who survive a tragedy, but not others, like millions who couldn't make it. So like if I have this platform, first, like our generation, we're very quick to adapt, and healers not. I'm not gonna say quick to heal, but because I had access to, I know how to speak English, and I know how to like use different resources and therapy that was available to me here. So I tapped on every opportunity that I could to make myself sure that, okay, if I've been through all of this, I need to make sure that I um, stabilize myself a bit. And even when I still struggle with a lot of people in the UK and relate to them, because I see certain people like who've never experienced or heard about like what we experience in school and our daily life. And sometimes like there is this disassociation. It's like, oh, you're there, but you're not there. Like, how do I relate to them?
Yeah.
And then they want to be your friends. They want to be around you because you're like this like very something unique. It's like, oh, you came from Afghanistan and like war and stuff. And I think it's quite disrespectful as well, but at the same time it's like how you kind of give up making them understand, to be honest. Like, what's the point?
I will say one thing which I'm sure everyone will agree with, including yourself. The experiences that unfortunately you've had are normal but shouldn't be. The goal isn't that, this goes without saying, you would like to think that groups like your own, your NGO, and many others, and through government help, that this normalization of struggle is not there for the next generation of Afghanistan. That's easier said
Yeah,
and easier wished for than achieved. But I can understand why for some people, it war is. I mean, people play video games of war and shootings. There's a very big. They do it
different.
in my country as well.
Yeah,
It's like it's strange. It's strange how on this one planet, so many different lives. But the best thing that I picked up on that you just said was this idea of selective realizing of successful people, and then thinking that because one person did it, why couldn't everybody else do it? Because life is circumstantial. That's
yeah,
the answer. Life is circumstantial at the best of times. I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow. That could directly or indirectly affect my ability to grow this podcast. I could get ill. Someone in my family, something could happen. Like there's many examples, but life is circumstantial. So you can't look at one person and say, "They made it. Why didn't you make it?" I don't know what you go through. I don't know what mental health struggles you might have. You might be genetically more predisposition to get something like depression
exactly.
or even diabetes, which in some ways can be just as worse because that can lead to many complications. Life is circumstantial, and you just
Yeah.
you can't talk to people like that.
And you tapped on something important, because like how certain people are more prone to depression. It is
Yeah.
the intergenerational trauma that a lot of people do carry, and especially women as well. Like when I go back home, and sometime when my parents, especially my grandparents, when they talk about what they, so I'm the third generation, all of us been in war. So like starting from my grandmother, then my mom, then me, then my like my grandfather, my dad, and me. So imagine like three generations grew up in war and lived in war.
Wow.
So when my grandfather tells me stories like, oh, what happened when the Civil War started, or my mom talks about Civil War, like, and the things they have experienced, like constant seeing bodies, and seeing family members getting killed in front of them. Sometimes like we knew we could relate to certain extent, because in Afghanistan, obviously, like having was like a daily thing. Like you would go to school, you would be like read your kalima and read your ayat kursi, and then you come back home. So when I came to the UK, I was kind of like still like, my mind was still like not very like, still not like stable. Like, yeah, like I still felt like, okay, oh, something is gonna happen. So there's a danger out there. And when I took therapies, like my therapist would say like, no, like everything is calm, you need to like, you're in a safe place. But like my mind wouldn't like accept it, because, and imagine my mom and dad and like my grandfather and mother like living through like years and years without receiving the therapy, without receiving that support that is. And yes, you are more prone to depression, because I get anxious and depressed very quickly comparing to a normal person. Like if something is happening, my heart palpitation would like increase very quickly. I overthink quickly. I have to like make sure everything is like organized a certain way. I have to like think twice before making any decision. And these are all like symptoms of like high functioning anxiety and depression. And that's why I'm gonna come back to the Muska app that we making to why I started working on this application and why it's such an important thing to talk about mental health and talk about intergenerational trauma, and especially those who made it out, but also like millions and millions who didn't make it out and still struggling. That yes, and also not to raise awareness that what we've been through, you shouldn't romanticize this. You shouldn't like think of it like, oh yes,
Yeah.
it's a hero story. To some people it might be, but like when I go back home or like a lot of my friends who've been through similar struggle, we don't feel that way. Like we still like have to like think so much like, oh, my cousins are still back in Afghanistan, they don't have access to education. They're all like my female cousins, they don't have access to education. So when you hear stories back from home and you're sitting here, so that survival guilt also gets triggered more as well. It's like, okay, am I doing enough? Am I not doing enough? And that leads to burnout as well, because you're always constantly doing something. It's like, yeah, I need to do this in order to help people back home.
I think you said it beautifully. It's a brilliant monologue that you just went off on. And it is the tragic reality of a lot of people all over the world, not just Afghanistan, but many countries as such, where they carry generational trauma because it's never forgotten about and it's always spoken about. And the same parents, the parental struggles that you had, your parents had, your grandparents had. When Taban Shorj was on the podcast, she said something very similar, that women almost like carry all of the stress.
Yeah.
It's true, because if humans are thought patterns and a recollection of things they've been taught, then to be taught about war and surviving for many years becomes an ideal way of looking at life. So if it took Heela a long time to adapt when coming to the UK, it's probably because a lot of her conversations at night weren't necessarily about cold story or I don't know, something fun they can plan on the weekend. It's not normal to tell a child, read your prayer before going to school. You might get
Definitely not. And I thought these were normal. Like when I, before taking therapy, I thought, oh, this is like Afghan thing, you know? And then my friends who here is like, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, okay, this is not normal.
Yeah, no, no,
I
no.
swear there's like so many stories. One time we were in the office when I was working in Afghanistan, and we had launch into the office and we were like in underground because they have like safe rooms there. And my colleague was like, oh, let me put some green tea because it's gonna take a while to get cleared out.
Wow.
And I was like, sometime when I look back on that, it's like how we have normalized so many things. And I swear we were like, it was me and two of my other colleagues, and I still remember that picture. Is like, we're just having tea and we're just looking at our clock. It's okay. By the time of 5, the police will come and then the army will come and they might clear it out. And then we'll go back to, and then I went back to uni and studied like my class as well. So this is how it was so normalized. And a lot of people will still think it's normal. But obviously, like I said, it's not just Afghanistan. Most people who come from conflict zone, because you've seen that so close, it would be very hard sometimes to like, what I struggle a lot in the UK sometimes when people talk about first world issues and struggles, and then I'm like, oh yeah, we've been through so much, like what are you chatting about?
Sorry, Hila, say it louder for the people in the back. Please say it louder for the people at the back.
It's just like, because when like it comes, and I don't want to like this a lot of people struggle, but like a lot of people when they talk about first world struggles, that's just like, that's a completely different like world. Is like what we have been through, and you're just talking about your latte not being hot enough or you so like there's a lot of issues, and I just don't want to say that yes, like our struggle should be equal, but at least know what you're saying in front of a person who've been through so much, and then talk about the struggles you're facing. And I think acknowledging our privilege and using all the resources that's available, it's still such a privilege. And sometimes when I look back upon like when people are doing their undergrads here or going to school, the amount of resources they have in order to build such like the best career that they can have, make initiatives, but they're not tabbing onto it. I know people have their own struggles, but I'm just like talking from my experience here. Like I said, back in school, because we were in the government school, we were studying biology and chemistry in our head, like, because there was no like lab to like put the stuff here. Like people, like my professor, like teacher would say like, oh, imagine mixing this into this and this is how you create certain thing. And I'm like, oh really? And then he would like explain biology and I'm like, oh, this is how we do it. And we had just one class for sports, but bear in mind we didn't have a lot of sports equipment also. So instead of playing basketball or any other thing, we were just like roaming around. That was like just a break for us. That's how under resourced the public schools were in Afghanistan.
No, I feel you. I feel you. Going back on the first world problem thing, I think it's important to firstly acknowledge we can only deal with the life that we have, right?
Yeah.
So I can't every time stop and think to myself, at least I'm not in a war zone. But what I can do is realize that certain things I'm complaining about are more of a privilege than they are actually a complaint.
Yeah.
Like the small things.
Like have gratitude, like literally have gratitude, and do not be a tone deaf person. Like the amount of people are tone deaf and not realizing. And gratitude is really important because what we have been through kind of like made us more realized. So that's why like I'm doing multiple projects at the same time and I can't stay still, because in my head I always think that I'm going to lose these opportunities even there's so many resources available. So like me doing my 9 to 5, then working on application, then doing this, and then going to multiple conferences, you get the mental toll that's on you. But in my head I feel like, oh, like I'm being left behind. I need to use these resources that are available, because now that I have that freedom that I didn't have back home, so you feel like it's gonna be taken away from you again. So that's why like a lot of people who have high function depression as well like tend to like do more and more from conflict zone.
Yeah, because you're always on a state of high alert.
Yeah.
People always like, I mean, I grew up in the UK. I moved there when I was like 5, 6. But sometimes you can still have that scarce mentality.
Yeah.
And just also being kind of ambitious as I am, I don't know what a day off looks like sometimes. And I think my best days are just days where I don't burn out. But you're right, people need to stop being tone deaf and they need to realize what privileges it is that they have. They need to be in touch with people that are come here through diaspora, immigration, and recognize that we do have a lot of issues in the UK, but it could always be worse. And by that, I don't mean economically. I mean the fact that you don't wake up and your life isn't at an immediate threat, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, funnily enough, it's the UK isn't even 100 years past their wars. If you think about it, like World War II,
Yeah.
where the UK was constantly getting bombed, and many of that generation know what it's like to go into underground bunkers and lose family members. But somewhat the history has been forgotten. The craziest stat I ever read or heard was that apparently in the history of humanity, we actually live the most peaceful era. And I was like, what must it have been like
Yeah.
100 years ago if this is considered peaceful?
Well, at least we know war was always there.
I mean, wow, war is a
Yeah. I think it's more of like, yeah, we had that war that was physically hurting a lot of people. Now there is this digital war that's always there as well. And I think in terms of UK had the time to heal, you know? Like they had like a stable period where people like heal themselves and like different generation. But for us it's like it was never a thing. We never had that opportunity to like, oh my god, take a pause and heal. Like Afghanistan, that's what I'm saying. Like Afghanistan is like one of the country like constant war, like back to back war. There's a civil war, there was the US invasion, and then what's next? Like right now you see what the situation is in the country. So we never like had an opportunity to even take a pause and like even let the country breathe a bit. Like what is going on in our country, like what's happening. And that's quite like sometimes makes me really sad as well. Like when I go back and see videos, it makes me nostalgic, like to think, because I had a lot of good memories as well back with my friends, with my classmates, with my school friends, some of them with whom I have like 20 plus friendship years, and we talk about like good memories. I also don't want to paint a picture of Afghanistan that's something like that scares people. That's something I also want to like clarify, that Afghanistan is such a beautiful country and we have such beautiful people, like hospitality, like even with all the struggles Afghans have been through, like whenever you meet any Afghan shopkeeper or anything, you can see that kindness and the offer that they give you. Like they will not take money even if they have anything and nothing
They're
in their family, and they're
generous.
like, they have that generosity, and that's something that war cannot take from us, from Afghans. And I really like that about my country and my people. And I hope like the country like get like a period of time where it can breathe and we can go back and like build it.
I love that point. And something else that I've noticed about Afghani people is they're so diverse as well.
Yeah.
They're so diverse, and that's also just a beautiful thing because you can all come together and share culture and have multiple languages. So that again is a brilliant thing.
And food. It is.
Oh,
By the
Afghan?
way, Afghan food is the best food in the world.
She's the guest, so I'll let her have that. I'm not going to
Shout out to
argue back.
Afghan food.
I'm not going to argue back. Afghan food is delicious, definitely delicious. And Heela is a good cook.
I'm trying, but
She's a good cook.
I like cooking. Cooking is my love language.
Is it?
Yeah, like I think it's a love language that we kind of took from our parents. You know, when your parents used to get angry and then they're like, "Oh, bring you food,"
Yeah, yeah.
as a peace offering. So I think I kind of picked that from my parents and family as well. But yeah, I think my love language is quality time with the people I love and just cooking for them
That's beautiful.
and bringing pisho as well.
Pishu, yeah. We're going to have another small segment of a podcast one day where she brings Pishu and I bring Ruby and our cats, our little princesses, just sit and we can just talk for a bit.
Yeah, can't wait for that one.
But yeah, shout out to Afghan food and Afghan culture. And the reason why more people don't know about the beauty of Afghanistan is because of the war that has plagued the country for so long. So hopefully within our lifetimes, it is very possible to maybe see a sustained time of peace. Can I just go back to the app and the development of it? How far along are you? What would you like to directly implement?
Mhm.
And has it been very difficult? Technology is supposed to make things easier, has it?
I'm not a tech person, so that's why it's a bit harder for me to understand the whole coding and things. So the app is called Muska. Muska means laughter. And why we created this, because like I said, like we did so many things with AYAPO. We did peace building work, we did humanitarian work, we did different workshop, youth empowerment, whether it comes to leadership, different stuff. But one thing that was always lacking is that people didn't have the time to actually look into themselves and like stabilize themselves, especially our community. And people have limited awareness about mental health and how that's impacting the community in general, because there is like and then we kind of shifted our focus, like how do we do collective healing? There is individual healing and then there is collective healing. And we kind of thought about it, and we did a lot of like consultation with a lot of women on the ground. It's like, okay, what do you need? And then there's like, oh, we need like a digital solution for a country like Afghanistan. So that's why we created this app, which will be launched in July. Not just in Afghanistan, it's going to be launched in South Sudan, in Palestine, and DRC as well, in Congo. And the whole point of it is to provide free health services to people in conflict. And it's going to be about knowledge, available therapists within their radar that can provide free therapy, work with us pro bono. It's going to be in different languages, in English, Farsi, Pashto, and Arabic. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. And the app is designed in a way that even if you don't have Wi-Fi connection, you can have a lot of accessibility to this app, because we know there is this a lot of people don't have access to either electricity or like the Wi-Fi. And but then there is another issue to tackle later on. The first is to establish a product. And most of the people who are working on this app with us, they're all volunteers, and I love the team. And it's taking us some time as well to like put all the content. I'm really excited about this, and I think this is one step towards like a collective healing in Afghanistan, for them to like understand themselves better, know that what happened to them is not their fault, and the way they're reacting to certain things as well.
Yeah, and we're very social creatures. So if you manage to fix a few people within the group, you can probably radiate that happiness into everybody else, in all honesty. So I look forward to this app. I will definitely be posting it on my socials and telling you guys all about it and how you can just spread the word. You know, it might not be something you use, but someone you know might need it. So anything this platform can do for you, you're more than welcome at all times.
Thank you. That's why I'm on this podcast, by the way, guys.
What do you mean?
For the app. So Lazo can help me spread awareness.
Yeah, listen, we're here for it. We're here for it. Like, I have the opportunity to sit and try and mold my life the way I want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
My parents made certain sacrifices so I could have certain privileges. And as much as I love this podcast and enjoy it, it's always important to try and give back when you can do that. And giving back on a podcast is about bringing the right people on and educating people the right way and putting out the right messages. And I've been very blessed with the people that have come on my podcast, including yourself, who allow me to do that. And it makes me feel good about what we're doing as well. You know, we could have easily had a very typical everyday podcast, but we decided to aim a bit higher. So, and so far through the listenership and the viewership of all of you sat down, we've managed to do that. So we'll just continue, and try to make a difference where you can, because with all of these things, you don't have to be Heela to make a difference. You don't necessarily have to be Afghan. There are ways in which you can take some responsibility and accountability, and you inspire the people around you. When you normalize helping others, your friends then also do it. We all look up to one another within our groups and subgroups. So normalize taking time out of our busy lives, truly, to make time for things that matter. Because we all love to make time for our social events and going out and all of our fancy things that we put on our social media, which I don't want you to stop doing. And you shouldn't feel guilty about. That's your life here. Live it to the fullest. But also normalize every once in a while taking some time out to help others, whether it's donating or volunteering. And if everyone was to just do that, let's say twice a year, then imagine how many volunteers we would have, right? Like, because there's so many of us here in the UK. There's so many young people out there who can just dedicate a few hours on a weekend. And before you know it, we'd be making a difference that most of us didn't even think was imaginable. So I hope that's something you all take away from this. And yeah, that's my little monologue finish.
It's a good, just echoing what Lazo said, agreeing with him on everything he said.
Yeah, he'll start to realize that I can't be wrong. It's either that or I'm ruling this with an iron fist.
No, but I agree.
You're in the scopes of the lens. Do not disagree.
But no, definitely, I think the whole point of the podcast is to give a lot of people a very different perspective of how certain people have lived in different parts of the world. But at the same time, it's not to guilt shame anyone here that you have to do certain things because I'm doing certain things. We all know that people come from very different background. Everyone have a very different life experiences. So do the best as you can, but be intentional. The time you have on this earth, use it intentionally and support other people. And it's not just gonna help other people. It's spiritually will help you as well. Just be connected with other human beings, but also contributing to a good cause. It's something I think a lot of people take for granted, and I think people should do more, especially with the privilege and resources that are available. With us, yeah.
If you only help when you feel good, then you do not help enough. If you are only a good person when things are going well, then you are not a good enough person. A measure of you is the type of person you are when adversity hits. And that is the same in every walk of life. You're only as good as your job when you're being challenged. You're only as good of a podcaster when you're being challenged. And we are right now responding to adversity. which I'll tell you guys about in another episode. So adversity builds character. So allow it. Allow it to build your character. As strange as that might sound to an extent. Can we talk about One Young World in Manchester? Because yeah, I'm from Manchester. I just want to hear about how great that event was, you know?
I think, when was it?
2 years ago?
2 years ago, right?
I was at uni. I couldn't go.
It was nice, I think. It was an event, like, it was just like any other forums, to be honest, like meeting different people.
Where was it held?
I think it was near Manchester City. I just don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, they had a big venue, but I just don't know what was it. Because I was based in Leeds back then, so I came from Leeds to Manchester, so I didn't know much about Manchester. So yeah, I think it was good. Like One Young World, like I met so many incredible people, young leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs. But obviously, the highlight was like everyone came to see Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. So that was like why most people, I think, kind of like attended the conference as well. But One Young Goal was also an opportunity for a lot of people to attend different capacity building workshop. People from very different countries that you wouldn't be able to like meet them in any normal circumstances were there in One Young World. And there was opportunities for collaboration, partnership, at the same time hearing the stories of so many incredible people, which was really interesting for me as well. So yeah, I had really good experience in One Young World, and they do it every year. So I hope like solving the visa barrier issues as well, the funding issues. So if anyone wants to attend One Young World, please do. It's happening in Munich this year.
Did you say it was in November?
I think it's in November, but yeah, I think it's in November, yeah.
Yeah, so by the time this podcast is rolled out, it'll probably be May. So you got a good few months to try and get yourself to One Young World, and there will be amazing people there. Munich is an amazing city. Coming here must have been a challenge for you. On the face of it, you look at it and you think Heela came away from a war zone and now everything must be easy, but it's not. It has its own challenges, and you're also away from family,
Yeah.
which is not easy. And how are you emotionally and quite literally navigating living in the UK and away from family?
Well, when I came here, I came through the Achieving Scholarship. So I did my master's in Leeds, and I like Leeds. It's very student city, gives like very student vibes, and I met like incredible people there. I think after first year and when the government collapsed, we were like, okay, kind of like, what is next? So we didn't had like, it's not just me, but also a lot of like my friends who also became refugees in the UK. We were like, okay, how do we navigate life in the UK? So this is also my like early 20s. So like living in the UK and how I should navigate life without family support and without having a community. I think I experimented a lot. One of my coping mechanism was just busy, keep myself busy. Applied for multiple jobs. Sometime I was doing two jobs at the same time just to like be in the denial on what happened into Afghanistan. But I think slowly when I started to like settle in a bit, like physically I am settled in the UK, emotionally I'm still not here. Like it is like a home but still not home. Like, I don't like trying to.
It's not easy.
It's not, yeah.
You grew up somewhere
Completely different. So I think one thing I struggle a lot while in the UK is like finding that community that you can connect with, especially with other young people here. There are like other generation as well, especially those who are a bit older than us or like came later on or like came previously 20 years ago, 3 years ago. There's still like this disconnect between that diaspora because the struggles are very different. But at the same time, for me, one of the struggle was like how I can stay grounded and here I am, and also at the same time work in different organization, but at the same time completely like handle the situation where like you've completely lost the country and like you don't have the same friends anymore, your family's not here as well. So it was quite difficult and it's still difficult. I think my way of connecting back to my community is hosting, like I said, doing the Nowruz celebration we did, the Eid celebration we did, making sure I wear my Afghan clothes when I go to certain places. These are like the small things, that keeps me grounded and connected
Hold
to
on to your culture and your
hold on to
people.
my culture, exactly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there was this nostalgia always in your head. Is like, oh, what life could have been if like we didn't had war, we couldn't had those things.
Can I ask you something then? So indirectly, after the collapse of the government, you, who was on a master's, became a refugee.
Yeah, because we were part of UK government scheme, Afghan resettlement scheme. So all previous chief and alumni became part of the scheme directly. I don't want to go into details too much because too much legal issues and things. But yeah, that's how we ended up staying here. And that settlement is still going on right now. It's a bit slow. There's still a lot of people who haven't been evacuated, and they still need their visa to be processed quickly. And they've been living in Pakistan for almost 3 years without their paperwork getting done. So there's a lot of refugees who came after the collapse, and some of my friends and fellows who are still here, we sometimes talk is like, oh, how is life treating you? How is struggle in the UK? And for them, it's still like taking like a while to like settle in properly, like get used to the new environment. Those who can speak English can kind of like settle a bit easily because like there's no language barrier. But for me, I was like struggling between like, oh, what if I lose my Afghan side completely? Because you're in your early 20s. I was like, I had that fear as well as like, where can I find a community of like Muslims and Afghan that I can connect with? And I kind of like took a very proactive approach to it, like built up my community in Leeds. And then I moved here in Manchester. I met you and I met other people as well. So slowly building upon that. And I think having that community and safety is really important if you want to like not feel like completely isolated living in a foreign country.
With anybody, regardless of where you're from, UK or outside of the UK, Afghanistan, Kurdistan, one of the most beautiful things you carry with you is your tradition and culture,
Yeah.
your food, your norms and values, and to be able to hang on to that, not only to maintain your identity, but also just to help your mental health at times, right? Because it is not easy leaving your country, especially under your circumstances. What should have been a few years of education to have turned into perhaps even what could be described as a struggle in some ways. Even if you do have a great life here and do have a great community here, there's still many problems that you have to put on your back while actually trying to still maintain Afghan youth ambassadors for peace.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's never gonna be home. The struggles are always gonna be there, but it's like, yeah, like I said, it's like these small things that like keep you grounded, like certain tradition, certain celebration that you're doing. um Even poetry is such a big thing in Afghanistan, just like
It
listening
is.
to Afghan songs, making chai tea. You know how we played guard. So that was fun moments like we had.
We did a lot of things. If you know, you know. When the sun is up, I am looking very hard.
You're looking what?
When the sun is up, I'm looking very hard.
uh
Did you get it?
no.
Because do you remember like the cards that I was handed?
Oh yeah,
It all happened during the day.
yeah. But it was a good moment. You met so many new people like that.
Hey, listen, I've met a lot of people. We had a lot of fun. And I like that, connecting with people, you know.
Yeah, so these are like, because obviously for us, like for some of us, our families are not here. So when you celebrate like Eid or like Nowruz, you kind of feel like really lonely because in Afghanistan is such a big, like you celebrate Eid for like 1 week, even if it's like 3 days, you're like going from one house to another house. And even Nowruz, like the Persian New Year was such a big thing in Afghanistan. So in here, when I was like, oh my God, what if I lose that culture side? What if I like lose it? So that's why I was like, let's celebrate it and invite people who don't know about like our culture and the things that we do. And we had really good time. Like,
I think only 3 of us actually celebrated Nowruz in that room that day.
no, there were like me and just one Afghan girl and
Me.
you, yeah, so
So
3.
3.
But you guys don't have Af Mewa, the thing we make,
The 7 day.
the 7 dry fruit thingy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we don't. The Kurdish Nowruz is a bit different to the Afghani and the Persian Nowruz. Because our story is Kawi Asangar, Kawa the blacksmith who
Mhm.
killed the tyrant king, who had two massive snakes on his shoulders, and he would go around taking the sons of people. So Kawa was a father and had many sons, and the evil king, he was killing and taking many children. Some of those were Kawa's children. And one day he just realized, a lot of my kids have gone and they're missing. And Kawa goes and chops the head off the tyrant king. And there begins Nowruz, the new year. Or is this one of the stories, one of the myths related to it? What I love about things like Nowruz is they are such old traditions.
Yeah, they are.
They are such legends. I mean, before you could even imagine civilization as you know it, Nowruz was a thing, you know? So
Yeah.
to have carried that for so long, I think is beautiful. And they do it a bit differently in different places, like Heela said, but it's
Yeah.
fun.
I mean, the whole point is just to like bring people together.
Yeah.
Every celebration will have its own history and origin.
Mhm.
Like people will tell you different thing. But for Afghan, it was always like a sense of community. People celebrating something. Now, Rose means new day.
Yeah, of course, of
So
course.
it was like,
The start of spring.
yeah, start of spring. So like when I tell you in Afghanistan, we used to have these big festivals. Like for Nowruz, it will go on for ages. And I used to remember when back in Afghanistan when Nowruz started, it was me and my cousin. I can't name all of them because I don't know how many are there in Afghanistan. We used to like we had like 3 4 cars, and my auntie's grandfather. We all used to go from Kabul to Nangarhar, where I'm from, and we used to like cook together, eat together, play games, board games, and that was such a fun time, like having sleepovers with cousins. And those are the things that, like, when I say like this is how people in Afghanistan lived as well as still living to a certain extent, that people like Afghan people are very social, but also they're like, I think naturally they are like very adventurous as well. Like they want to do like this community
Well,
stuff.
if you think about it, back where we are from, there's mountainous regions,
Yeah.
massive lakes, and before social media and all of these jobs that we stay busy with, people ventured out. People got food in different ways. People found different ways to have fun. If you go back to Kurdistan, one thing we have every Friday is a Seidan.
Mm.
Seidan means everybody goes out, they takes their food and their barbecues, and where they go here is just to the natural landscape. They go on top of the mountains, they go by the lakes, and this is where everyone socializes. To me, this is a very non modern, traditional way of spending time. There's no excessive bookings or money that goes into it. It's just we, as Kurdish people of the city, we want somewhere to socialize.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to the mountains of Azmar or Gueja, those are the names for it, and the family's going to gather. Whereas everything, no disrespect, everything sometimes in the West is so modernized that for me to spend time with people, I must go into a new fancy building with a fancy restaurant. And it's going to have nice food, don't get me wrong. But like in certain countries, you're very much always in touch with nature. And Afghanistan is one of them.
Yeah, like Afghanistan and the landscape is really beautiful. Like if the country was peaceful and we didn't had all these issues, I think it was one of the most beautiful countries. And we have a lot of like really good spots as well. We have ski seasons as well. Like a lot of people don't know, like, but like we have ski seasons in Afghanistan, and people used to go for skiing as well. And every province has its own beautiful landscape. And yeah, like we have winter and summer as well. But like a lot of the fruit is the best in Afghanistan. I'm like, do y'all?
She's really going for the food today.
Yeah. Try pomegranate. It's like the best. And yeah, a lot of things is like, and it was like it didn't cost a lot as well. Like, but the thing is, you know what made it a difference is like everyone brought something with themselves, and I think it's in our culture, like it's similar as well in the Kurdish culture, Afghan culture, is that like the way we like make sure people are welcome in your house. Like hospitality is such a big thing, making sure everyone is like welcome, they're like comfortable. And this is also like a big thing in Afghanistan is like if you like if you go to the poorest of families, they will welcome you and like treat you like a king. And that's really something I really like about Afghanistan and Afghan people. And yeah, the landscape is it's incredible. Like I didn't had unfortunately seen most of Afghanistan myself. Like we have 34 provinces, and I barely saw like 4 or 3 of them.
It's a big country.
It's a big country, yeah, and every province has its own uniqueness. And if you go to Nuristan, it's like almost like 10 times better version of Lake District, probably. But yeah, it's yeah, I think those things, like when you think about it, kind of like makes you nostalgic as well.
Naturally, it's normal for people to miss where they come from. But while you're here, you just got to make the most of it and create these additional networks, because we don't know what comes as a blessing in disguise individually for us, for other people. You could just have to make the most of your opportunities. And, at the end of the day, I
Yeah.
think being able to carry on your work while being in the UK is a great testament to you and your team. To you and your team, of course.
Thank
Especially
you.
those back home who are on the ground and delivering all the help. And I think, they can never be undermined for what they do. It's truly groundbreaking.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I know like my team, when I talk to them, they're such strong people. Like I get inspired more by them, like the work they're doing with little support that they're receiving from our end. But yeah, like I'm a firm believer that things happen, they do happen for a reason. So hopefully, like finding a community in Manchester in the UK, that's something I'm really looking forward. And yeah, even through this podcast, we might find like some good friends
Even through this podcast, I
in
was
Manchester.
literally scrolling through Instagram randomly one day, and I saw your account and I saw the charity, and one or a couple of messages later, we are here. We have celebrated Nowruz together, Eid together. I have met your amazing friends. It has been an absolute pleasure.
And
This has
Pishu.
been Pishu. Pishu is the one. I'm not even exaggerating, guys. Pishu, and she's just like, she's adorable. And Pishu is like the cutest kitty ever. Slightly biased because I think Ruby. But long story cut short, it's been amazing. It's amazing what a small connection can turn into. And I will definitely be supporting your work, your app, and any final points before we close off this particular episode?
Now I'm blanking out because we talked about so many things.
Yeah, take your time.
I think it's just like using your platform really wisely. It's really important because, I mean, you'll hear about me through this podcast, and if because Lazo used his social media wisely as well, like the way he's like raising awareness about certain things. This is one example. And just like small individual acts of kindness, especially we're making, it has a ripple effect on a lot of community. And then I think you might not see the progress too quickly, but slowly you will see
Yeah.
the impact of your work. So even if you're donating and supporting a family for 3 months, you could have making a big impact in their life. You might not see it, like living in the UK is like, oh, it's 50 pounds is nothing, and I don't think I made a big difference, but you actually did. So even like raising awareness, sharing your stories about what's happening, informing your family and your community, even like you can start with your own circle. You don't need to like shout out to all the world, it's like, what, this is wrong, this is right. Just starting with your own circle first, like yourself and the community you're living in, and then you will see the positive ripple effect of all of this contribution and impact you're making.
It's literally a snowball effect. The metaphor of slowly pushing a little snowball and it gathers more and more snow. And then
Exactly.
metaphorically as well, people start helping you push that big snowball. I remember we used to do it at school. In my primary school, we had this massive field. And on snow days, there are not that many of in Manchester, you get there early and everyone starts creating little snowballs, putting them together and start pushing them together.
Yeah.
And working together and helping is kind of like that sometimes. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. And remember, there's always something you can do. And a small act is an act nonetheless. You don't need a grand gesture to make a difference in the world. And it has to small steps. So short steps, long vision.
Yeah.
Short steps, long vision. And that's how you attain success, through great consistency. And before you know it, God only knows, honestly. I wish you all nothing but the best, Heela. And
Thank
all of
you.
you out there, thank you for listening, watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, reshare all the others, and we will see you out in the next one. Take care.
Thank you.